Guys, welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and today's topic is going to be an interesting one. We talk a lot about, the strong friend, the supporter, the light, the dependable person. But we don't talk about the flip side of that. What happens when you are the go-to person for everybody, but you don't have too many people to go to, or people don't show up when you are in need of support, when you ask for it, whatever the case may be. People just don't show up. And we're going to talk about that today because there's levels to it. There's something that happens inevitably when you are when you still got to show up for yourself. I put it like that. So, yeah, we're going to get into it. So stay tuned for that. Grab some water, put on your seatbelt, and just listen along. All right, stay tuned. Guys, what's going on? Welcome. How's your heart space? How's your head space? Before I get any further, I just want to take the time to thank the patron supporters, the new patrons. Miguel, thank you. Lindsay, thank you for upping your patron donation. Katie, welcome. Denise, Christy, welcome. Jaja Binks, I appreciate you being here. Morgan, Jen, thank you guys for being supporters and just showing up. And yeah, there are perks. If you guys aren't supporting the podcast, there's actually going to be an extension of this episode for the $8 tier. So whoever's on that tier will get the extension of this very important episode. And it's kind of funny. Art imitates life. So yeah, this episode in particular really comes full circle when we talk about support, what it looks like. And it's been a very interesting couple of weeks. I'd say months maybe. And to get right into it, the funny thing about being dependable, or being the, for lack of a better word, the light, or the healer, all these things is it's very seldom that you are on the receptive end in quantity or even quality of that same kind of effort. And basically what I'm saying is, like, what happens when the helper needs help, or the healer needs healing too, and not too many people show up. What happens, right? What happens? And it's something that I've actually experienced more than I'd like to admit. And it affects you. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you're the type of person that's always there for everybody else, and whether, you know, people are there or because you asked for them to be there, or people just don't show up even when they know that you're going through something. There's something that happens to you internally. You inevitably change. And the reason why you change is because you have to. You have to. You have to still show up for yourself even though people don't show up. Right? When you ask for what you need, and your needs are still not met, something happens. And what I want to say first and foremost is don't reject yourself. Don't abandon yourself. Don't get down on yourself, because you need you to get through this. And the beautiful thing about people not showing up is now you have opportunity for evaluation. You have opportunity for reflection. There's opportunity in that. There's so much opportunity in that. And every time it's happened, I grow a little bit, right? I grow a little bit and I wise up, right? You know, a lot of times there's this thing that happens where we start thinking in absolutes, you know, because the people that we hoped to show up for us, the way we're willing to show up for them or be present, kind of like disappear or don't even check in, you know? Not, hey, you know, just make sure you're good. You know, is there anything that you need? None of this happens. None of this happens. And as a person who's very self-sufficient and very hyper independent, it's like one hand washes the other. The reason why I'm so self-sufficient is because in a lot of ways I've had to be, right? The reason why I don't really ask for help is because it doesn't always come. And I don't want to say, so listening to this, I want you to understand something. Recognize the people that do show up, because it's not absolute, right? Don't think in absolutes. That's first and foremost. Don't think in absolutes. When you say everybody or nobody showed up, is that really true? Or did certain people show up that you didn't expect, but the people that you hope and expected to be present for you were nowhere in sight? Is that the reality? Because sometimes that is very true. Like I said, it really meant a lot to have patrons, like people show up and pour into me the way I've been pouring consistently, because it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of life growing, because what I bring to you guys is a reflection of my personal experiences, which means that I'm either working through my experiences earnestly or I have worked through those experiences, which means that I've had to be self-reliant and I've had to be consistent and I had to show up. Despite how challenging these experiences were, I had to still show up and be able to pour into this. So it means the world to not just have people show up to listen, but to hear me and pour back into me, right? So I want you to understand something as the strong friend, as the go-to person, as the healer, the light. Focus on the people that are focused on you. And you don't have to be bitter about it. Feel your shit, right? Feel your shit. And I want you to pay attention to the feelings that come up when these things happen. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it disappointment? Is it abandonment? Is it rejection? What do you feel in these moments? Because I'm going to tell you something. There is a change that happens. There is a switch that either turns off or turns on when these things happen. And the feeling does not change. The feeling does not change, because I will tell you, every time it's the same feeling. Fortunately, it's different people, which means that I'm not experiencing the same experience with the same person. I wise up, right? And this is what you have to do and you have to consider. And for the people that are subscribed to the Patreon tier, I'm going to be going into how to overcome this process, practical steps to take to get through this, because it's a lot. I've been ruminating on this throughout life, but I will say very much recently, because it's been happening in a lot of ways, in professional, in personal. It's been taking place for me, and every single time I still had to show up for myself. So the funny thing you have to realize is that you think you don't have people, but you do. There are certain people that are going to show up for you. I promise you. There are certain people that say, hey, I'm here if you need me. And then when you need them, they are there. Right? You being one of them. You need you. You always need you. That's what you have to realize. You always need you. And when these experiences happen and they take place, I want you to be very mindful of what it is that you need in those moments. You know, I want you to be very mindful. And I want you to be very mindful of the people, again, that show up in those moments of need, whether you ask for it or not. Because I think one of the worst feelings is someone being fully aware of your journey and your experiences, and they don't show up. They don't even check it. It hits a little. It resonates on a sub level, and like I said, it inevitably changes you. But don't let it make you bitter. Don't let it turn you cold. That's not the goal. The goal is to be more mindful. That's the beautiful thing about absence, right? Absence breeds awareness. Absence can also breed abundance. And this isn't just like some over the counter bullshit I'm giving you. I'm telling you right now, based off of personal experiences, absence breeds abundance and awareness. Because you're going to figure out what's important to you. You're going to figure out what you're capable of. And you're going to figure out the people that are in your life that are present. Not just when it's on their terms, but present for you. Whether you are seeking it or not, they are there. Right? I talked a lot about consistency versus frequency. This is something I want you to take from this episode, and I want you to understand. Okay? And I want you to also understand, too, it is not your job to spare people or coddle people's feelings for not being present for you. Don't downplay how you feel. And I'm not saying you have to lash out on them or anything, but, take stock. Take stock in how you feel. Honor your feelings. Really have that conversation with yourself about what it is you're feeling. It may come out as anger, but the truth of the matter is under it is fear. Under it is disappointment. Under it is sadness. There's levels to it, which is why there are, I'll put it to you like this. No one wants to feel like they don't have people around, right? Nobody likes that feeling, which is why a lot of people make sure that they don't feel that way, aka being hyper independent. And very few people carry out to make sure that other people don't feel that way. So everybody knows the feeling, but not too many people act on that feeling for other people, if that makes sense. We all know that we want to be treated well. Everybody knows that they want to be treated well. But how often do those people, or how often does everybody make sure that they are taking care of other people in those same regards? I know what it feels like to not have people present. Like I said, I fucking know it. I live it. And I've kind of overcame it multiple times. More than I want to admit. And in those moments, I'm like, oh shit, am I doing something wrong? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me that, I don't have this big network of support. One, I think I've made it to the point where it's like, I don't necessarily desire to be supported by everybody. That is not the goal. But there is something to be said about the people that we have in our life, or the people that show up in our lives to get from us, that we cannot get from. Whether it's through, like I said, professionally, personally. When people know that they can come to you for their needs, to get their needs met consistently, and they don't show up in return, that does something to you. That does something to you. And I'm going to, no bullshit, it changes you. And it has to change. The reason why it changes you, because you now have to switch gears. You still have to be there for yourself. So that's what I mean by it changes you. So externally, you still have to show up, right? You still have to show up. You still have to be present for yourself. You can't abandon yourself. You can't not support you. So you have to show up. You have to get you have to become very, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say logical. You still got to show up. You got to get the job done. So you got to think a little bit smarter, right? You put your emotions to the side, but after that job or that task is done, you sit and those feelings come up and those thoughts come up. And you're thinking about everything. And, that I really don't subscribe to that bullshit of like, don't expect much from people. It doesn't mean anything. That's bullshit. And it's usually coming from people who are in relationships, right? How do you have a relationship without expectations? So what does don't expect anything from people mean? I don't expect anything necessarily from strangers, like people that I don't know, that I don't cross paths with. Like, I have no expectations of them. I don't expect them to read my mind. I don't expect them to be present for me. Nothing. But it's different when you establish some kind of relationship with someone, or like I said, people know that they can show up to get what they need from you. And you're just kind of left to your own devices on the flip side. That changes you. I don't want to go through life expecting people to let me down. For what? And if I'm not going to have expectations of people, that means I have to reevaluate the relationship. So you're not in a position that I have expectations for you. It's like going to a job and you are in an executive position and you're saying, well, don't have expectations of me. It's a fucking job and it's a title that you showed up for. So if you're a friend or spouse, whatever the case may be, you're somebody's, you're a professional liaison. You now have a title where there are expectations that are aligned with that title. Like I said, being that I'm self-sufficient and I do my own thing anyway, there's not much I expect from people. But one of the worst feelings I can honestly tell you is expecting and hoping certain people show up just to check in or like just pour into you. And it doesn't come. It changes you. It changes you. But I want to tell you this, whoever's listening, if you are the person that everybody goes to, if you are the helper, you're the friend, you're the strong friend, just change where you pour. And change how much you pour, right? Change how much you pour. And I want you to be very mindful of the people that did show up when you asked. Pour there. Pour there. That's how you restore yourself. That's how you rejuvenate yourself. You pour where you were poured into. And you be mindful moving forward because you don't owe that energy to anybody just freely. Right? And that's why I developed the Patreon, because what I understood is this podcast is a lot of work and we're coming up on 4 years and it's consistent. I was looking at how many episodes I've made, not even including the Night Owl. I got to get back to that, but not even including the Night Owl. You figure for 4 years consistently, I dropped an episode. Maybe I'd miss a week or two just for my mental health. But for 4 years consistently dropping episodes, and not just episodes of me talking, but like tools to get through life for 4 years straight. And, it's that thing all the time of like, well, did you ask for help? Yeah. So what happens when you ask for help and it still doesn't show? Don't let that sit on you in a way that you think that you are doing something wrong, you're defective, you're rejected, whatever the case may be. Don't take it there. Allow the moment of scarcity be a moment of abundance in thinking, abundance in awareness, abundance in what you are capable of. That's all. There's always something to learn. Like they say, sometimes when you need people the most, they don't show up. They don't show up. But that doesn't mean that you stop showing up. You just show up different. I've talked to one of my great aunt, even my mom about this. I talked to her. These two people were always very present very present. And then when they talk, who's checking on them? Who's saying, hey, just because I want to make sure you're good. Hey, I'm calling to make sure you're all right. And that's the thing for me. It's like, I won't let too much time pass. If I know that my friend is going through a challenging spell, whether they're sick, whether something happened, I don't care what it is. I do my best to be proactive, right? Because, like I said, not everybody has always had help and support. So sometimes they don't know how to ask for it. So sometimes I make it a point to show up. Actually, all the time. I just make it a point to be present. Like, if I say I got you, I got you. And I don't disappear when you need it the most. If anything, I fall forward even more, because what I understand is, like, maybe you don't have the energy, right? But I got you. And I'm going to see what I can offer you versus waiting for you to say, hey, I need. It's like, well, how can I help now that I'm present? And I think I talked about this last week, the whole concept of being a light, right? A lot of times it's just moths. It's not good or bad, it just is. When a moth sees a light, it just goes to the light to get what it needs from the light, then it goes about its business. It's not trying to keep that light on. It's not trying to keep that light on. So really think about that. Like I said, this episode is really for, man, whatever label. If you're the strong friend, you're the healer, you're the light, you're the this, you're the that. The caretaker of others outside of you. I see you. I hear you, I feel you, I resonate with you. Look, do not reject yourself. And if people don't show up, look at the people that do. Because I promise you, there are people out there who are willing to show up, and they hear you, and they want to be present. And they will find a way to be present, right? Focus on them. And focus on you. You are one of those people. You will always be one of those people. As long as you keep showing up, you will always be one of those people that you could rely on, that you are supported by. And I am living proof of that. Shit. That's just how life is. And as challenging as it can be, I keep showing up. And I'm going to keep showing up. All right. Yes. So also thank you guys who have been rating the podcast. That shit is so dope. We've been growing. We've been in the top 200, top 100 in different countries now, because of you guys. So if you haven't, just leave a rating or a review of the podcast. It goes a long way. And like I said, if you want to become a Patreon supporter, head on over. The link is going to be in the description of this podcast episode. On Spotify, on iTunes, anywhere you listen to podcasts, in the description, it's the Patreon link, and you could join. There's also the Apple subscription. So if you're on iTunes, you can subscribe to Flight School, which is it's basically the Apple version of the Patreon, where you get early access to these episodes. You get ad-free episode content, and you also get bonus tidbits. I created something called the Moment in Time, and it's basically a 1-minute mantra, poem, or just a moment of thought for you guys to kind of take along your journey. So that all of this is a part of the subscription aspect of this podcast. So whether you go through Patreon or whether you subscribe through Apple Podcast, the links are in the show notes of this episode. So if you're listening on Apple, if you scroll down to what this episode is about, There's the Patreon link. There's the Apple link. You could click on either one. Same thing applies to Patreon, Amazon, wherever. The links are there if you want to join and get some bonus content. And like I said, this podcast is a lot of work for me, and it's now my work. It's not just a hobby, it's work. So I will be making it a point to be more tactful, I'd say, about how these episodes are. And I want to give more to the people that have been given back to me. So I will be releasing a bonus episode for this episode in terms of practical steps or how-tos in the process of showing up for yourself when no one shows, or when very few people show. How do you still show up for yourself? What does that look like? Okay, so I'll be dropping that episode. And like I said, if you want to become a Patreon supporter, you'll get access to the extended episode and so many other perks. But in the meantime, guys, take care of yourselves, all right? And truly take care of each other. We're all going through something. And just because, there's that strong friend out there that seems to be doing everything for everybody else, doesn't mean that they always have people showing up for them. Whether they want it or not. What can you do without being prompted all the time? How can you be present for the people in your life? Even if you want to be content restricted, it doesn't matter. Like, don't think too much into it. All right. So yeah, take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. All right. And take care of each other. All right, y'all. Take flight.